Hello and welcome to the Deep Track Podcast, an exploration of watches, trends, and culture with a few adventures along the way. I'm your host, Blake Bettner. This week, I'm happy to welcome Andrew McUtchen to the podcast. Andrew is the founder of Time+Tide watches, who is celebrating their 10th anniversary this year. I've known Andrew for a few years now, and have always appreciated the positive energy that he brings to the table, and his unique perspective on the industry, which doesn't seem to be influenced by any kind of outside influences. Which is a very healthy perspective to have. In this discussion, Andrew and I talk about the history of Time+Tide and the journey to where he's at now, which has brought him and his family from Australia to London. They've got a lot of exciting things in the works, and they represent a lot of really interesting brands, some of my favorite brands actually, in their physical retail space in Australia. Something that hopefully they'll be bringing to London in the not too distant future. We also talk a bit about the state of the industry and the impact that some of these smaller micro brands are having on the industry as a whole. It's a really fun discussion, and I appreciate Andrew's perspective here. So thank you to him for making the time. I hope you enjoyed the episode as much as I did chatting with him. If you're not following along with Time+Tide or Andrew, I'll leave some links to him on Instagram as well as their website down below. And with that, enjoy this week's podcast with Andrew McUtchen. Andrew McUtchen, thanks so much for joining me today. It's good to see you, my friend.
Blake, what a pleasure to be here.
We've been trying to get this together for a while, so I'm really happy to finally have you on. You are in the UK, so it is your afternoon, early evening over there on a Friday, so means even more. What are you wearing on your wrist today, Andrew?
Well, I'm wearing this. I'm wearing a Hublot Big Bang Unico white ceramic 42. The watch that it's just got an energy to it. It just so rarely goes uncommented on, and as someone that just likes to talk watches, it leads to talking watches.
It leads to talking watches. It's the you of watches, right? It's got a great creative energy about it. Not afraid to take its own path a little bit.
It's not for
I love
everybody.
This watch. Yeah, not for everybody, which is just fine, because
Totally.
Watches and people that are for everybody are probably like kind of boring, right? So
I think George Bamford had a sticker that he used to throw at me in the middle of a recording session, which was, if I was everyone's cup of tea, I'd be a mug. And I like that one. I'm going to carry that one to the grave.
I love it.
But I did I just came from the gym, and I've got a bit of a buzz on from the gym. And I wore it at the gym. So, it's one of those watches that in the course of your day, no matter what you got coming up, it's kind of just exciting to think about not taking it off, because I've worn it to like black tie before, where I've had like a little white sort of, what do you call it, top pocket scenario, like the little handkerchief in the top.
Oh, yeah.
Like if your tux.
Like an ascot stuck in there. Yeah.
Something like that. And a little bit of white picks up the watch. And it's always just it's one of those watches that, strangely enough, can adapt to a lot of stuff that is on in a day. And it tends to bring some kind of fresh energy to it. So I appreciate you saying it's like me. That's very kind of you. I take that as a compliment.
It's versatile. I love that you wore it in the gym during the workout, all of that stuff.
100%. And it was like... there were a couple of moves. This is me like a few minutes ago. I'm just showing Blake a picture of it in the gym.
Nice.
And a couple of times I was like, this is still kind of crazy. Like, this is an expensive watch. But at the same time, I don't know, there are certain watches that wear you and they feel fragile, or they feel like, that you need to remain conscious of them. Whereas this truly, because of the way it locks on with this integrated rubber strap, you just put it on, you forget about it, you go about your day, and it, suddenly you're like, oh shit, I'm still wearing this and I'm at the gym. This is stupid. But, that's me.
So it's not, it doesn't like inhibit your movement or anything like that. It just kind of like.
No. There were some moments where I was like, because I saw there's a guy, Andy Zhang, who smashed up his Patek. I can't remember this watch. The Patek chronograph with the beads of rice bracelet, the sporty one, red and black color scheme. I'm trying to remember the name of it. It's like one of their sportier chronograph models. But anyway, he was wearing it at the gym and smashed it to pieces, and that image is burned in my mind. But still, I go on with this watch anyway. I'm like, no, it can deal.
It can deal. It can deal. That's what it's made for. I love people that put these watches to use, at least in any way, shape, or form, like the manufacturer touts it, with these
Yeah.
rubber things and the marketing images of people doing crazy stuff. And people are like, it just
And
sits in a
so
desk.
few people actually ever do that. What are you wearing
Yeah.
today?
I'm wearing a Zen U50.
Ooh, nice.
Speaking of watches that can, like, kind of handle anything, I suppose. This has the submarine steel on it. It's a great watch. I've had it for a number of years now. And, sometimes you open up your watch box and there's a watch that hasn't been worn in a long time. It just calls your name one day, and then it's off to the races. It's like you owe it to the watch. I hate having watches that just sit there and don't get worn.
It's time to go for those watches. The days are up for those watches, in my view.
Yeah, exactly. So, anybody who's not familiar with you, for people who aren't familiar with you, maybe give us a brief introduction of who you are, the man, the myth, the legend, Andrew McUtchen of
Easy.
Time and Tide.
Easy.
Give us a little bit of a backstory, who you are, and what you're up to these days.
I think I was thinking about this today because I didn't ask you for questions, but I wanted to know the general thought space because some interviews can be very focused on one thing, and I like that this was a broad one. And you asked some, you gave me a bit of a heads up that there might be a general contextual question, and it sort of sent me down a bit of an interesting path of thinking, how did I end up here? And I did come to the revelation or realization today that I'm kind of an accidental watch media person and founder person. Like others were always destined for this kind of notoriety or career path or greatness. Like, anyone that's hung in as a watch media brand for 10 years plus, that's an achievement in a endlessly challenging and shifting digital environment. That's a really hard thing to do. But for a lot of these guys, like your Robert Jan Brewers, your Frank Gielands, your Ben Climers, your Wei Ko's, your Zach Weiss, these guys, this was their dream. This was what they set out to do. And I realize I'm quite different to everyone in that cohort because I started this Time and Tide thing in 2014 just as another media project, another small business project, another startup concept. And it certainly was not my dream for this to be the one thing that I do in my life.
Yeah.
And I'm sure that if you'd have taken that guy aside in 2014 and said, hey, dude, this thing you're about to start is ultimately going to consume you completely and change where you live, change the way you think, change the people you mix with every day, change what you talk about every day, I would have been completely shocked. And I would have been it would have given me some pause actually about what I was doing because it was never the goal to take my life over to the extent that it has. So I'm an accidental watch journalist and an accidental watch media founder. And it's probably there's been many years in that 10 years where I felt not entirely comfortable with the fact that this business is so hungry, so consuming. I just didn't really, there were, those moments where you go, I didn't sign up for this.
Yeah.
I had
Yeah.
a lot of those in the first sort of 5, 6, 7 years even. And then there was a point where I think I just went, look, I didn't really want my entire life to be consumed with this single hobby, but it's a pretty good life. And I'm actually quite good friends with some of my colleagues and competitors now. And I just looked at it. I considered that, you know what? I have the wind at my back with this. I'm just going to go all in. And I think
Yeah.
3, 4 years ago, everything changed. And the business kind of had gone along, ticking along in Australia at a certain level and, good steady growth and kind of plateaued at about 6 or 7 people in the team. And it was okay. It was a good life. But then when I sort of went, you know what, dude, stop resisting this. Stop starting other businesses. Stop putting other people in the big chair. Like I had other editors that took all the glory and as they should have, they were very good at their job and this was their job to be the driving force behind my business because I wanted to do other things. And then 4 years ago or so, I went, you know what, it's time for you to sit in that big chair and actually own this thing that you've created. See what happens when you go all in. And that was the point when things took a different trajectory. And I think probably that leads to this moment where nearly 30, with I think 29 staff across 3 continents or 4 countries. I've got 4 people with me now in the UK. We opened the UK office in August of last year. So it's been a big change, but what changed was me and me
Yeah.
looking at this differently and saying, you don't always, the horse that comes home isn't always the one you want to come home. And it isn't always the one you think will come home. But you're lucky to have a horse that's won. Like this is, I'm proud of this business now. And I really feel, it's an awful buzzword, but I just feel grateful to be here. And I feel super appreciative of everything this job has unlocked for me. And
Yeah.
as someone that's sat with me in many great experiences, and said, many great cities of this world, it is, there are a lot of upside to the life. Um, and instead of kind of thinking about where else I could be and what else I could be doing, I think I feel pretty lucky to have had the shot we've had and to
Yeah.
be in this position where I feel like we just can get properly started now.
Yeah, yeah. It's a refreshing outlook, which I've always appreciated about you, and I've always kind of found you to have this kind of uh, not chaotic, but like a creative energy about you that I really appreciate, and I get the sense that that you need an outlet for that. So and I when I get in that way where I've got all these kind of crazy ideas or weird ideas and I'm always kind of scared, oh, that's stupid or that's not going to work. Like, how do you overcome those kinds of like, look, we just got to try these things and see what works, and if it doesn't, then that's okay, kind of a situation. But how have you turned your business into your own kind of lab for your own creativity?
I do love the honesty of you saying there's a chaotic energy because that's probably true. And to an extent, I think you need to be fairly boundless in what you think is possible to achieve big things. But the answer is kind of the opposite of chaos. The answer is guardrails, people that have limits so that you can, and people you trust,
Yeah,
and it's a team. If I was able to do everything I wanted to do in this business without limit, I think that it would have looked very different, and I just don't think we'd probably be. I don't think we would have been as successful. So
yeah,
I tend to put people around me. I'm really skeptical and I'm really suspicious of yes people. And when I hire for my team, I seek people that will say no to me, and I seek people that will push back on me,
yeah,
and that I seek people to put the brakes on my own energy and drive. I don't seek people. I always hear about celebrities that create these echo chambers around themselves, like Michael Jackson's sort of entourage, and how you're not allowed to say anything. You're not allowed to criticize the celebrity that's your boss, or you're not allowed to argue with them or to offer a different point of view. And I always think, well, that's a highway to hell. You're going to fail.
yeah,
So the answer to channeling chaotic and endless energy and creativity is the right amount of resistance and the right team sometimes I'll just throw an idea out there just to have someone else shut it down. And sometimes when they don't, I get really nervous. I'm like, hang on, I didn't actually want to do that. I was just testing y'all. um,
love it.
yeah.
So,
So I think just to finish that off, the way that what the business that's emerged now is like 10% of what it could have been, but it's all the good ideas, all of the good Andrew energy got channeled to a point of fruition. And again, they're not all my ideas alone, but a lot of things have been stopped, and thank God.
God, I love it. So, taking a step back, 10 years, congratulations, by the way, and on the new
Thank you.
showroom. It all looks beautiful. Uh, Coming into this, you'd mentioned that maybe you 10 years ago wouldn't have foreseen kind of still being in this watch space. I think years ago you mentioned to me that you didn't really think of yourself as like the watch nerd guy that got into this to
Hmm.
like nerd out on watches, and I always kind of appreciated that you came from a different perspective on this, which is why I generally find it interesting to talk about watches with you. I like talking about watches with people who kind of come at it from a slightly different way than I do, because I learn a lot from them and I gain kind of a deeper appreciation for another perspective. So what was the world that you were in that you decided, okay, watches, there could be something there? And it's important to note for listeners, 10 years ago, the watch media space was very different. It was
Mm.
more of kind of a nerdy space. It wasn't kind of like in the hip, cool, hype, whatever mainstream that it kind of is now. It was a different space
Yeah.
back then. So what was it about the watch space that drew you to it, and what were you doing prior? You come from the fashion. You have a fashion background, from what I understand,
No,
or that's
definitely
just
not.
something that you've always interested you.
Not fashion. No, I was just at GQ, and GQ was one of my many kind of main magazine freelance gigs. And GQ's always carried a sexy swagger to me as a brand. I've always seen that logo and just gone, I want to write for that. I want to be a part of that cultural zeitgeist. But my life before Time and Tide was freelance writing for newspapers and doing like 4,000 word celebrity profiles and just the really good stuff. I had such a good job. I had such a good life stretching ahead of me, but I also wanted money.
Naturally.
And I had kids. I was increasingly just more and more progeny was appearing in the barnyard, and I realized that this life of indulgent but incredibly satisfying, rewarding journalism was just not going to cut it. And then I think I started to just gently fan the flames of ambition by thinking, okay, so if I start this watch thing, and in terms of my perspective, and it is extraordinary to me that I feel so confident in my perspective now, because for many, many years I felt inferior. I felt inadequate. I felt understudied. I felt like I was never going to learn enough to have a valid opinion. But in some part of me realized that the watch media world was making me feel like that, and it was making millions of people feel like that. And it was
Mhm.
very toxic. It was very unwelcoming. And I just, in the back of my mind, I'm thinking, if I feel like this, a lot of people feel like this. So maybe I should create something that doesn't make people feel like this. And
Yeah.
Time and Tide from its very beginning was I used my Aussie card to be that happy go lucky, laid back, no judgment kind of tone to our content. Have had some very knowledgeable and very authoritative editors along the way. So it's never an excuse not to know your shit, but it's also not an excuse to be like a dick and to be
Yeah.
really arrogant and kind of ivory tower about the subject. So I think in the long term it was a great thing, and it was a great opportunity to have this sort of subculture, watch subculture, that it was just so critical and so inclusive instead of exclusive. It was no, it wasn't inclusive. It was very insular. It
Insular,
was
yeah.
very incel. It was awful. I found that I just couldn't post anything without getting criticized about, oh, that's clearly a redial, or oh, that's you've got the reference number wrong, or this. Everything I was doing in those early days sort of had us falling short in some way, and certainly I did not feel that I could ever be a great like a to think of where I am now versus where I thought I could get to with my knowledge base. It's and again, that's a fairly honest, and I'm certainly not pulling any punches here, because I think it's even still, even now as I talk about it, I get these horrible flashbacks to those feelings in the early days. But ultimately, it just was an opportunity, and it emerged that it became clear to me that as Time and Tide started gaining momentum, and as we gained followers, and as we started having a conversation, there was a really nice feedback constantly happening, which was, this feels different. This feels good. This feels more open and warm. And you guys are kind of just a bit more chill. And if I had known how far that would get us, then that I would have realized how powerful that was. But in those days, I just needed to create something that was more true to me, because I wasn't a baby Jack Forster trying to furiously speak in that way and have that tone. And for Jack, that's completely authentic. And now you look at the sort of those crazy, just intense and hyper focused blog posts that he does now for 1916 or Watchbox or whatever it's called. And he's always been that person, but
Yeah.
definitely felt in the beginning that we stood a chance of standing out because we were so different, and because we spoke to an Australian audience who just weren't as watch literate as an American audience or an Asian audience. So it kind of, the audience shaped the tone, but the tone came from me, because I, as someone that was really curious about watches, didn't feel like I belonged. So I created somewhere else.
Yeah, yeah. I think that's an interesting perspective, and I think this is it's not exclusive to the watch space. There's a lot of enthusiast spaces that are these kind of like walled off areas that can be kind of intimidating to approach, and then you get in this kind of it's like a negative feedback loop almost, especially if you kind of find yourself just scrolling through like Instagram or something, and like how that can make you feel like you're missing out on something, or you're not as glamorous, or you don't have the right this or that. Like I find myself, I have to be really conscious of how much time I spend, like just looking through Instagram, because then it's like, oh, I wasn't invited to that, or I didn't get that, or
Mm,
I've never heard of that, or yeah, it's like you don't have that seat at the cool kids table, right? And it's
exactly.
easy to feel
I
like, oh,
hated
I
that
don't
feeling.
belong in this space,
Yeah.
which sucks. And it's like you have to be honest with yourself about, who am I, and that's what I should, and that I feel good about who I am and what I, how I think about this and what I bring to the table, and I feel confident about that. So I don't have to be one of these whatever it is on, my social persona or anything like that. But it's a hard thing to go through and like discover and
Mm.
figure out, and it's, you always kind of feel like you're just this other part of the space.
And I think the great irony is that so-called, sitting at the cool kids table, and that desire to feel like you can hold down a spot and argue reference numbers, it creates this mass homogenization of opinion, of
Yeah.
culture, of perspective, to a point where it's so fucking dull. And when
Yeah.
you said that Hublot's kind of you, it's like, I own AP. I could wear something that gets me a seat at the cool kids table today, and I could be touting and spouting that off. I'm wearing Hublot because that is actually my perspective, which is, have the courage to wear a watch that isn't popular in the
Yeah.
watch
Yeah.
cohort. Have the courage to wear a watch that suits your lifestyle, that put it outside of the matrix of where it sits on the cool wall. And actually, so I think in some ways you're quite right. Like I guess there's a reason I wore it for this podcast, and that is that I do love to be divisive and to shake things up. And if this is a bad brand, tell me why. Let's argue. Let's talk about it.
Yeah.
Let's test that theory, because to my eyes and in my experience, this watch was an expensive purchase, and it has delivered. It has over delivered. I think my expectations were low because the sentiments, you just can't help but be affected by things. But it's just such a richer experience if you have the courage to go your own way, and I want to stand for that. I want to encourage people to be to feel really good about staking their own ground in this great hobby that we love, keeping it positive, letting
Yeah.
people. It's like I saw a quote that keeps popping up on my Instagram of Keanu Reeves saying, "I've reached a point in my life where if 1.1 plus 1 equals 5 to somebody, I'm just going to say good on you and let it be." And I
Sure.
think
Sure.
let's bring some 1 plus 1 equals 5 to the watch world, because it's underscored by a lot of this snobbery and judgment, and also I think, without going too far down the rabbit hole, I think that there's definitely a new era of watch media which is driven by clickbait and by negativity, because negativity drives
Yeah.
numbers, and because
Yeah.
so many, I would say, kind of vigilante or out, so many media people, if you call them that, I suppose, vloggers and YouTubers and so on, I mean, it's that their whole stock and trade is outrage and negativity, and that's been another interesting era to sort of observe. Is that after the kind of the ivory tower snobbery era, there comes this pitchfork negativity era. It's like, oh God. So I do try to be, I do try to stand apart from all of that and just do our thing and keep shining our light.
Yeah, I love like I've been around watches a long time, and I've heard a lot of people say a lot of different things about Hublot, and I've never really understood it all. I've liked a lot of what they've done, like truly and honestly, and at times I've been like too embarrassed to say that. Maybe like earlier on, now I don't care, and like frankly, the last few kind of big events that I go to, the Hublot meeting is like always my favorite one. Like I
Mhm.
love the people there are always great.
And
It's
tell
the
the
most
people
fun
why.
meeting
It's
that I
because
have.
and there's always something creative being revealed.
Yes, yes, and these are watch it like look. We're not saving lives here. Nobody needs these things anymore. They should bring something else to the table that like bring you joy or inspiration or whatever. And they express the creativity like beautifully.
Mm.
It's I don't understand the bad rap that they get, or is it just something that kind of like feeds back on itself? Like, well, it's a cool thing. Like I heard this popular YouTuber or this guy, trashing it, so it's got to be trash, right? Or it's too
Mm.
embarrassing to see to be seen. But I don't know where all that got started with or why. Uh,
I kind of, if we can go into this for a moment, because again, I'm absolutely free in my opinion with Hublot. So I understand that selling Ebosh movements for 15,000 US dollars is bold and it's kind of nuts. But they got away with it because they built enough value through their marketing proposition, through their ambassador alignments, through this just power brand, like the Jean-Claude Biver touch. He knows how to make you want stuff. And
yeah,
you put your right brain, your analytical brain gets kind of anesthetized by just this, I want to be a part of that. So the criticism is fair if you look at it from an analytical perspective and break this thing down. But what that leaves out of the equation is just there there's desire created around this brand that adds value that is not part of that equation. And I still get a little bit of a power kick. I get a little bit of an alpha, extra bit of energy from this watch when I think about all of the amazing sports people and all of that first insane Hublot mania wave, which many people listening will be too young to know about. But when in the early 2000s, mid 2000s, when every sports star you've ever looked up to was wearing this brand, and every
yeah,
rapper you ever looked up to was wearing this brand, it left an effect. And it is easy to break any watch down and say, oh, I can see the percentage that the brand is asking me to pay just for cachet and prestige. And that
yeah,
percentage with Hublot in the beginning was absolutely huge. But
yeah,
at that point, it wasn't about a scientific equation. It was shit. Hublot's massive. Look at these people. Look at this energy. Look at this positioning. Look how big the watches are. And I remember I was in publishing and the print ads for Hublot. The watches took the whole page, and you just like this big towering sort of monolith of just cool, and it leaves a massive impression. So I get the criticism from the geeks and from the people that want to break a watch down to its components and then value it and say, well, that is the value of the watch.
yeah,
And look, I think it's interesting to look at a brand like Christopher Ward and look at a brand like Code 41. Code 41 do that. They allow you to see how much they pay for the flywheel, for the balance wheel, for the escapement. They break it down into its components and say, this is what we paid for everything in this watch. But that's only one way to come at watch desire.
yeah,
That appeals to the value proposition and the accountant that says, oh, how much am I really paying for this? How much is this object worth? But
yeah,
that's not how desire works. That's not how marketing works. That's not how my I just want stuff, and I don't care how much it costs somebody to make. I just want it, and that's what people are discounting when they break Hublot down to its parts and say, "Oh, it's a Solita movement or it's an ETA movement." How that I could get that movement in a watch for $1,000. It's like, yeah, but
yeah.
there's no story or meaning to that brand if the brand that's selling it hasn't invested in it. And Hublot has spent hundreds of millions of dollars in telling a story that I really like, actually.
Yeah, it's an emotion. I think the CEO of Rolex had said, refer to the watches as an emotional product.
Yes, and we can charge anything we
That's what they're
want because
selling.
we're selling dreams. That's what he said.
Yes, yeah, which is an interesting perspective, and I think when you go down the route of taking that kind of analytical approach, that accountant approach of, well, what is this worth, what is this movement worth, and it's a slippery slope to go down, because then it's, well, you don't need this in the first place. Like, why even get into it? Like, the
Exactly.
whole point of having these
Exactly.
things is like how it makes you feel and what you're going to use with it, the experiences that you want to have in it, and it's all these other things. It's not a necessity. It's not like a car,
Exactly. The whole,
So
in a way, you're right. The whole approach of, well, I'm going to scrutinize this in practical terms. It's like, well, it's fatally flawed because you got a phone in your pocket. So if there's
yeah.
an accountant deciding whether a watch is worth the money or not, it's immediately a doomed exercise.
Which I love. Yeah. So Hublot? What are there other brands that you are like get really excited about these days? There are other brands that you're paying attention to, and if you want to like back that into like, this is how you think about collecting watches. Do you consider yourself a collector? Like how's it impacted you on a personal level with what you wear and buy?
I think I've landed at a point where I sometimes when I just want something from that kind of emotional and how do I say this? There are just sometimes wordless desires that emerge. You don't need to understand anything more. And this was like when I bought a Moser, a Pioneer Central Seconds, I just didn't have any justification. I just really wanted it. I saw it and I felt this huge attraction towards this watch, the incredible mercurial dial, like midnight fume dial. I just knew enough to know that I was going to make this watch happen. And that's an example of coming at it from that. And I do love it when I feel that just inarticulate pull towards something. I can't verbalize why. And I do love it when I feel like that.
Hmm.
And lately I've felt that towards an Elegante, the model. I tried it on at a press event. Someone had one next to me at the table, and I put it on, and I just immediately felt that. And I looked at the way the quartz movement, the architecture of the quartz movement, and there's the way the circuitry all sort
Yeah.
of forms itself into this little heart, and then there's a
It's
little
so
row.
cool.
It's
The view
so
from the back.
cool.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I just felt this again, inarticulate, just like my heart was just like, I want one of these. And I loved how it felt on the wrist. I loved how slim and comfortable it was. I loved that it was a fully loomed dial. I loved the shape, this sort of the tonneau shape that's a little bit curved as well, hard to describe. I just
Yeah.
felt so that's a model that has me fixated. Absolutely resent the water resistance though, and there's a part of me that's like, even though I love this watch, there's a rational part of me that pushes back on that element. So I still feel like that. But in terms of the value proposition side, this is where I think I've just gotten more and more into small brands and micro brands and these direct to consumer brands that are able to bring so much to the plate for money. And I've been
Hmm.
spending a lot of time on the Farer website, Farer,
Yeah.
and I'm
Shout out to
just
Paul. Yeah.
Paul. I met Paul for the first time a few weeks ago, and he was wearing a model that I spent the whole time. I could only half hear what he was saying because I was just looking at this watch going, how do you do this for less than £1,500?
Yeah.
This this kind of spec sheet that just is unimpeachable, and the quality itself. And he was telling me about how the moon in their moon phase has to have three or four separate processes at three or four separate locations. The only way they can manage this is by using a company that I won't name that manage all of these the journey all of these components have to travel. But it was sort of this mix of looking at the moon phase part of this watch and being romantically attracted to this idea, but then my right brain that was still pushes back on the Elegante, the right brain was like, I can't find anything wrong with this watch at all. I think we need this watch. And it might even be like it's an Aventurine. There's an Aventurine moon phase model that just had me besotted. So they're two brands that very different, obviously different price points. I would only buy the Elegante at retail,
Yeah.
and then the
Which is a
Farah,
tricky proposition.
which is, pardon?
Which is a tricky proposition these days. Of
It
course, this
is.
is an
I
FP
think at
Journo
retail,
Elegante.
at retail, it's okay. I think it's under. I think it's like 15, which is
It's
again
just getting
okay.
one though,
It's
right?
getting
Like the
one
wait
exactly.
lists and it's
The,
yeah,
the price is not the problem. It's the getting it part. But
yeah,
that's two examples of watches that I've been fascinated by recently. But I wanted to demonstrate in those examples that I'm not like obviously the Hublot example that's me buying into the whole just in it to use an Australian term, the vibe of it.
sure,
But
sure,
I can still be very value proposition driven. And as someone that's gotten to know maybe much more than I ever imagined about how much it costs to pull a watch together, I look at a brand like Farah or Furlan, Mario, Baltic, or Ward, and just go, wow, how what where's the margin?
yeah,
I've heard some statistics of Ward, and it's like I think they had turnover of 27 million last year with an operating profit of like 50 grand or something. And I was like, that makes sense. Now
yeah,
now I get it. This is far be it from me to understand what Mike and those guys are, what the end game is there, but it sure as hell explains the value and the reason that brands like that are just having this sustained and quite, I think, significant impact on the industry.
yeah. I agree, and for good reason. And I think they're doing interesting things that should cause some other bigger brands to pause and take notice. And I'll throw like a brand like Formex in there. You're seeing interesting exotic materials being used at price points that you used to be associated with some of these materials at like way up the scale. So and watches like the Bel Canto are a great
Yeah.
example. And if you look at a Ferrer and you look at the side of the case or some of there are details there that don't need to be there that they pay attention to. There's just great care, and it's the same with Christopher Ward and the light catcher case. There's some really cool things happening on this level. For less than a couple grand that you can get
And
sometimes, which is
what's
great.
starting to happen is, and I couldn't agree more, and what's starting to happen, Blake, that is truly impressive is that they're managing to give you a genuine touchable experience of the untouchable. And the bel canto gives you a complication, a chiming complication at that, at a price that's extraordinary. And
Yeah,
you look at stone dials starting to enter for Farah,
yeah,
and you look at other complications that have previously been very, tourbillons and calendars and material innovation as well. Like you're starting to see, I mean, you've never seen titanium at the prices that we see it from brands like Boulder and that are
yeah,
finding a way to provide really nicely machined titanium at crazy prices. And you realize that a lot of the pricing hierarchy of the big box watch world is just nonsense. It is
yeah,
collusion. It is, hey, let's make titanium more expensive than steel just because it's let's just make it more premium. And then everyone's
yeah,
like, yeah, good idea. Let's not price a tourbillon beneath. Let's do a CNC tourbillon at Tag Heuer and let's make that 30. And then no one go beneath that because that's
yeah,
and it's you see Horage doing a tourbillon for whatever price. You see titanium now in the hundreds of dollars, and you realize, man, this is causing the industry some pain. And frankly,
yeah,
I support and am very much an active player in the mainstream watch industry, and I love the industry for the fact that it exists when it shouldn't. I love so
yeah.
much about the industry at large, but I can't say I'm disappointed that we have these table turner brands coming in and just shaking it up. I just love it. The drama, the excitement of it. It's got me hooked.
That's good. They should be pushing and pulling each other. Like that should be a healthy relationship, right, between these two. And I think it's only going to become exacerbated with brands like Baltic and Furlan Mari doing perpetual calendar type situations for,
Yeah,
10
the
grand or less. Like
secular
these are
perpetual.
incredible things happening. Yeah.
And then you've got like, and what's happening is you're seeing this new generation of how do I say this, protagonists in a story. You've got Andrea Ferland, you've got Tixia, Renault and Tixia is another brand, but he's working with absolutely elite watchmaker to create a module to make
Yeah.
this secular perpetual calendar that is at an unheard of price. And I don't know, I think that the future and the dynamic between, and I'm about to actually write a column in Watch Pro on the the speed to market of micro brands is causing real problems, and it's really starting to shine a light on how kind of slow-footed the industry can be. And now
Yeah.
we're seeing it, and I've realized it's not actually like fast fashion. Fast fashion takes the big fashion houses, it waits till they do something, and then it copies it in record time and it gets it out to market
Yeah.
and, gives people, like, democratizes high fashion in the high street. I think that micro brands, Toledano and Chan, Space One, and Nomo, they're not bouncing off trends that AP are bringing, or Patek, or MBNF, and democratizing those designs. They're now wagging the dog. You've
Yeah.
now got Toledano and Chan releasing their brutalist masterpiece, which I think is just, it can't be anything less than a game-changing watch, in my view. And then 2 weeks later, AP released the Remaster O2, which is their own model, and gets shouted out for being like a second-hand Toledano and Chan. So I find that as you say, the most interesting thing going forward is the dynamic between micro brands and the industry at large, because at the moment we are seeing this little tiny tail wag the whole dog, in my view.
Yeah, yeah, which is an exciting thing, and I think this I hope to see some interesting reaction from the kind of industry at large, because of this, and they can kind of rise to the challenge,
Well,
I
they're going to have to
suppose.
find. I mean, the thing is that they've got the most brilliant minds. They have the most brilliant designers. They have a lot of resources,
Yeah,
and it's game on. And it's certainly, they're not going to lie down. There's way too much money involved to just wave the white flag and go back to sort of doing boring things, because that won't cut it anymore anyway. So I feel
yeah,
that this is truly, it's like, I spoke to Federer once. I had one interview with him, and he said, without Nadal, he said, if Nadal wasn't with me right now, and this was in 2007 or 8, he said, if Nadal was not with me right now, and Djokovic, you can halve or 70% less my titles, because that's how few I'd have if I didn't have these great other forces
yeah,
pushing me. So I
yeah,
think that, what does this amount to as a big swirling sort of mix at the moment? I think it could be a very, very creative and charged era for the industry.
yeah. I hope so. I hope so. So switching gears a little bit, you made the move from Australia to London.
I did.
How long have you been there now?
Well, we did it. I have a family of 4 other girls. I have my wife and 3 daughters under 10. So I've got a bit of a girl gang happening,
Yeah,
and they rule the roost. So, for
you're
me to
outnumbered.
say, hey, girls, we're moving to London, would have been, we didn't vote on this. Um, and it's very much a team decision. I loved it that Ryan Gosling said, what are the five, give me the 5 words to live by. And he said, run it by Eva first. And I thought,
Yeah,
that's a wise man, because
yeah,
I did the same last year. I ran it by the family first, and we came and did a trial from January to May, which was purposely not a wonderful time to be here. I wanted to try it in like, summer in Europe's pretty persuasive. So we came in the worst time of the year, and I think we did okay.
yeah,
The girls weren't still didn't really want to move, but we pulled the band-aid off quickly and moved back in August for a year, and then we're now at the end of that year. and we're signing a commercial lease on a big property in Oxford Circus for Time+Tide, and we're signing like a multi-year residential lease as well. So we have gotten through the trial, and this is now going to be the next chapter for Time+Tide.
Oh, that's awesome.
We're based across both regions, and we obviously have Zach, the editor in New York, and we have our production team in Europe, in Amsterdam. So we're spread far and wide, but this kind of gambit to do UK is now going to be, it's sort of locked in as our next chapter.
Well, congratulations on that. You have to work on your English accent there.
I'm not sure about that. I think my Aussie accent's getting deeper the longer I stay here, because but my girls, oh my gosh, they sound like little they're quite the aristocracy. In the morning, it'll be, Daddy, can I have a cup of tea, please? I'm like, not if you ask like that, Misty.
Yeah.
Let's go back to let's try that again. Can I have a cup of tea, Dad?
Yeah. So it sounds like you have some exciting things in the works there at Time+Tide. What's next? You mentioned some commercial leases and stuff like that. Like you have developed. You have a storefront.
We have a store in Melbourne. We're right in the heart of Melbourne, in Collins Street. We've got a first floor property that is it's quite large, 150 square meters, quite a big space. We're the exclusive distributor of Baltic, Furlan, Underdog, Serica, just some of the great brands that have become internet famous and that we've been supporting since Kickstarter. All of the brands that we distribute are basically, we've been pushing, as you have over the years. Like, you've been probably the most prolific writer about these brands as well. So I know that you know, but they really appreciated that this, it's a bit like I was saying to someone today, it's a bit like if I was mates with Eddie Vedder before Pearl Jam started, he's going to know that I like him. He's not going to second guess whether it's because he's Eddie Vedder. And it's a bit like that with these guys. Like, I still remember the story we wrote on this crazy, like, watermelon themed watch, and just how, like, look at this quirky shit. How funny is this?
Yeah.
Not even knowing if it was any good, just thinking it was a cool and quirky idea. And I liked this kind of this retro design with super fresh, with a fresh update. So we did that for practically all the brands that we've become close to. And I think there was just a point in the last few years where their fame, they're almost household names, but certainly in Australia you couldn't go and try them. So we thought we'd, in a very small step way, just one step leads to another, we started to stock some of these brands, and then from there it sort of escalated, and suddenly we have this fantastic alternative retail kind of setup, which has this media aspect to it. Like, we record media in the space. It has culture and connection as part of it, as in there's regular meetups, and there's like big box brands in Australia are using the space to launch. For example, Xanath are there, I think, this weekend doing a big carnet reveal of their new pieces. So we've found a way to use this public interface to serve the whole industry. It's not a micro brand sort of superstore. And then, it's just, we've hit a spot. We've hit some kind of we've hit some sort of a need that people had which is to congregate, to share their love of watches, which is to go and try a Serica in person. You've heard so much about it. You've seen so much on Instagram. Where can I actually go and try one? And from that, we've been able to make some. I looked at the Tudor Harrods Green and thought, why do people still ask me to go and buy them a Harrods Green in London? So I thought, well, it's because it's restricted and limited, but just by proximity and by destination. So all the brands we stock have studio editions with us, and we've just sort of slowly but surely built out an offer that is very much based on and driven by what people want, which is that there's a strong drive for connection through watches, and you kind of can't go anywhere and until now. You can come see us.
It's a healthy thing. You got to see some of these watches, and you couldn't depict a better group of guys too, from Richard and Andrea and Jerome and Etienne. They're all just fantastic people at the heart of it. You kind
Yeah.
of come for the watches, you stay for the people type of situation there, and you've done some really cool collaborations with them as well. So, but I will say, I think my favorite collaboration, uh, when we showed up to Dubai for Dubai Watch Week, and we were in the press pen or whatever before walking in, and you took off the
Never.
Zenith
Yeah.
right before it came out, and
Yeah.
that watch was amazing. I think that's still my favorite collaboration that you've done. That turned out just fabulous, fabulously.
I still remember this is the Night Surfer, and I remember that moment. I remember that moment exactly. And I remember thinking, man, Blake likes it. What a kick! Such a trip that you. I remember exactly where we were, but I get that with the Night Surfer because I saw the Edge of Space and the Zenith Defy Revival Shadow, which is also in microblasted titanium, and I
Yeah,
remember just thinking, what is it about this microblasted titanium that's so sexy? It feels
so
so
good.
weird, like so. It's got this unearthly, almost like alien type of coolness on the wrist.
Yeah,
It has this sort of light sucking quality. It doesn't reflect any angles or light. It's a really strange material and it feels great. And that's the thing that maybe that's the quality that makes it sort of your favorite. But it's still to me, I don't know if we'll ever beat that in terms of the way there's that electric blue gradient on the dial and then this super matte material of the case and bracelet. I can't take any credit because I just said to Romain at Zenith, if we can ever do a watch in that material, please. And at the time, he's like, Andrew, that's something we're keeping very close to our chest. We don't want to ever do like a factory piece in microblasted titanium. It's a special thing for us. And he's a very Man, he's a funny guy. You never feel like he likes you, and even
yeah,
people that work with him say this. He's he's someone that keeps you he treats you mean to keep you keen, and it works. And
yeah.
at this time, I thought there's no chance, and then somehow I just broke through with one conversation in the pandemic, and it was on. And yeah, I agree. I think that one's still. I put that on, and without fail, I just get this charge when it hits the wrist.
Yeah, that's awesome. And yeah, Roman, we'll do our best to get him on the podcast soon.
You have to
He's
ask
tricky
him
to
about
read.
ask him
I
about
still
his
send
collection.
him.
His non-Zenith collection is crazy.
He's a serious watch dude and a
Yeah.
great mind. I still send him vintage Genesis that I come across, like, and I'll message him, hey, you need to get on this, or you need to get on this, and he's on the ball. He knows what's going on there, so they're in good hands. And the new CEO, who I just interviewed not too long ago, he's a real interesting guy as well. They got a good team over there, and Laurence
I was
Bozeman, of
impressed by
course.
Benoit. I'd heard
Yeah, Benoit
heard
Leclerc.
some.
That's yeah,
I was kind of a little bit nervous about him being sort of commercially driven and there being a less enthusiast sort of centric command module at Zenith. I was a bit panicked about that because I thought, no, this brand it's got to remain what it is. It can never be like in the LVMH stable. It is such a rarity. It's such a different prospect. But having met him and having sort of sensed his sort of sensitivity to what the brand is and not to fuck it up, basically, I
yeah,
felt
yeah,
quite comfortable that there will continue to be great commercial product from Zenith, but also a real preservation of something special because their
yeah.
story is special. Their story is unique. I mean, I would encourage anyone who travels to Switzerland for any watch tourism, do not miss the Zenith manufacturer. It is a trip that will blow your mind. And the most mind blowing thing is that the Zenith buildings, like the size of Zenith in La Loc is just staggering. Like often you get to a manufacturer and go, is this it? Like this is tiny. But Zenith, because they were such a mega producer of movements for so long, they still have, I think they're only occupying 30% of the buildings they still own. So it's quite a unusual and awesome place to visit. And there are some really
Yeah.
special parts of that trip.
And it's a quite beautiful area of Switzerland as well, and not
Oh,
too
it
far away
is.
from the museum, the Orological Museum there as well. So lots of great things to do around there. Andrew, I want to be sensitive of your time. I really appreciate you coming on the podcast today, man. It's just so much fun to talk to you as always. So I appreciate it.
Blake, thank you so much for having me. I think our last long chat was Geneva in that bar attached to the hotel right there on the lake. I think
Yes.
myself, and Frank Gielam, we spent a lot of time sort of freaking out
Yeah.
over his what Laurent Ferrier titanium watch. You
Yes.
remember?
That Sport Auto or something.
Yeah.
It's yes, that thing is cool, man.
It's so cool. So Frank, we still feel the jealousy,
Yeah.
but no, it's great to touch base again, and
Yeah.
congrats on the deep track. I've got questions for you too about making this jump. Do you want to tell me anything about how it's going versus the Instagram versus reality? How's it traveling for you?
It's going well. It's picking up momentum. It's really that, like, like I mentioned, when I get into scrolling through Instagram, it's easy to get kind of pulled into this. Oh, I got to be doing this or I'm missing that. But to really kind of make sure to pull myself out of, well,
Hmm.
no, my unique voice and
You need to
perspective
bring
needs to be
something.
over here.
Yeah.
I have to do, and then it's just like consistency, right? Just like
Yeah.
keeping at it and keeping to it. So, but it's been a lot of fun, and it kind of is reminding me to kind of rediscover my own voice and what I find interesting, not driven by, what's going to get the views or anything like that. It's just kind of me staying in my lane, But it's I love being able to talk to people like you and people that bring something different to the table that we can explore together and find our common ground and appreciation. Like I love that kind of stuff. So
Man, you're doing a
yeah.
great job, and I've got my first reference of deep track is like you telling me in that drink. It was like on our second or third Negroni. You're like, "Hey, actually, I got something to tell you." And I was like, "Oh boy, what do we got?" And then this was the news, and that was point A. And then point B is like, I think this will be episode 28 or 29 or 30 or something. So, no,
Yeah.
you are doing that consistency thing, and I want to applaud you for sticking this out because it definitely, I mean, you've been on board some big media titles as they've grown, and you obviously know what it takes. And man, I'm rooting for you.
Well, I appreciate it, Andrew. We'll have to do this again sometime.
Love to.
All right. Well, thank you so much for joining me, Andrew. I will leave links to where you can go find more of him and Time and Tide down below. That'll do it for this episode. Thanks so much for tuning in. And until next time, take care.